Good morning and welcome to July. We're certainly in a rainy pattern right now. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July, and we're certainly, the rain looks like the rain is going to continue on into next week. We're starting something here new at Looxahoma this quarter that I guess we've never have done before. We've adjusted all of our quarters where everyone they meet the same quarters and we're all studying the same thing. And some of the advantages to that is, of course, Tim is teaching, he's teaching the evangelism class down in the fellowship hall. But after that, we will all be on the same subject. And the good thing about that is if we have a teacher that gets sick, then students from another class can go in there and we're still on the same subject. It may not be exactly the same place they were before, but they at least they have some knowledge of what's going on, and that's the same thing with the new with our adult class. If one of us gets sick, then the young adult, they can come in and they can do the same thing. Of course, the Bible is God's word to mankind. It was written. How many men took part in writing the Bible? Anybody know?
Over 40. Somewhere around 40.
About 40 men. How many years did that take?
Lots. Bunches.
Yeah, 40 men were a period of about 1,600 years. And of course, the Old Testament tells of the beginning of man and God's dealing with a certain group of people, which were the Jews. Genesis is the first book that we read about in the Old Testament. And what does the word Genesis mean?
Beginning.
It means in the beginning. And the first 5 books were written by who? Moses. All right, then. There's going to be a test at the end of this quarter, so y'all keep up with it. Okay. Of course, during this early period, there was no written law. So how did God let His will be known to the people?
Patriarch.
Say it again.
The patriarch.
Okay.
The fathers of the family.
Okay. During this time, people would have dreams while they slept, or they would have visions while they were awake. And this quarter we'll be studying about the life of Joseph. When we think about Joseph, what's one of the first things we think about when we hear his name?
His coat of many colors.
Had a coat of many colors. Who gave it to him?
His mom did.
Who did?
His mama.
I think somebody else gave it to him.
Daddy.
His daddy.
No, his daddy did.
Yeah, his father gave it to him.
I thought all the time it was his mother did.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, he got a coat. Does anybody have any prayer requests this morning? Anybody? Okay. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for this day and for this opportunity that we have to come here to study from thy most holy word. We are thankful for each and every member, and we pray that the things that we learn today, that we will certainly apply to our everyday life. We are thankful for the words that were written before time, that we can go back and we can read about people who suffered many difficulties, but they remained faithful to thee all of their lives, and we pray that we can do the same. We are mindful of those, our number who have been mentioned, who are sick, those that are shut in. We ask thy blessing on each and every one of them, and pray that you be with us as we go through this class. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Like I said, our class is on Joseph, but I'm going to start just a little bit earlier to kind of get a timeline on kind of some of the stuff that was going on. Why did Esau hold a grudge toward Jacob? He stole his birthright, his blessing from his father. Who was his father? was his dad. And after Isaac, after he passed away, Esau planned to kill Jacob because of what he'd done. And when his mother found out about this plan, she sent Jacob away to her brother, whose name was Laban, that lived in Haran, to stay with him for a few days, till Esau had I guess it had kind of cooled down. And she also hoped that he would find a wife there, unlike the wives that Esau had, because Esau had married women who were considered heathens, or they were people who worshiped idols. So she was hoping he would find a good wife there. So Jacob, he begins his travels, and he comes upon a well where there are shepherds there, and they have their flocks. And he asked them if they knew of a man named Laban. And they said, yeah, we do know. In fact, here comes his daughter now, Rachel, who was, she took care of his sheep and his goats. And so he ran and he met her, and then he told her that he was a relative of her father. And so she went and ran and told her father about him. So Jacob, he had stayed there with them for about a month, and then Laban came to him and he asked him, he said, even though you're a relative of mine, you deserve to be paid for working. And he said, what do you want? Laban had a couple of daughters. One was named Leah, she was not very pretty, but beautiful. He had another daughter named Rachel, who was said to be very beautiful. So the Bible tells us that Rachel was very beautiful, and Jacob, he loved her and said that he would work for her for 7 years. Well, after the 7 years, he went to Laban and asked he wanted to marry her. So he prepared a large feast, and he got his daughter Leah, and he secretly gave her to Jacob. He also gave a slave girl to Leah. Her name was Zipporah, to be her servant. Well, the next morning, Jacob knew that he'd been tricked, and he went to Laban and asked him, expressed his anger about what had happened. And he told him that before, and it was customary in their country that any time the older always got married before the younger. So he said he would work another 7 years for Rachel, and which he did, and they were married, and she was given a slave girl whose name was Bilhah. When God saw that Leah was hated, he opened up her womb, but Rachel was barren. And so it was kind of, in that day and time, it was expected of a wife to bear sons for the husband, and she was unable to do that, and it's got to be, I guess, a matter of contention between her and her sister about that. And so Rachel wound up, and she gave her slave girl to Joseph to have children for her. Anytime y'all want to stop me and ask a question or have a comment or anything, y'all come right ahead. Because it's been said, there's a whole lot more knowledge out there than just standing up here. So anyway, then Leah, she had several sons, and then she found that she could not have children any longer, and so she gave her slave girl to Jacob, and they had children. And then after a time, she became pregnant again and had more children. And then the Bible tells us that God remembered Rachel. Do you think God had forgot Rachel?
No. Yeah.
No, he hadn't forgot her, but I think that he was probably teaching her a lesson on patience and on dependence on God, and she became pregnant at that time. So if you will, turn over to Genesis 35. And if someone would read 23 through 26, it will tell us about the 12 sons of Jacob. 23 through 26. Anybody?
The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, were Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram.
Okay, thank you. So we see that Leah had 6 sons, Rachel had 2 sons, and then the 2 servant girls, they both had 2 sons also. In Genesis 32:28, we see that God changed Jacob's name. What new name did he give him? Israel, okay. Turn over to 37, Genesis 37. Someone want to read verses 1 through 11 for me?
Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the son of Bilhah and the son of Zilpah. Is that how you say
Yeah,
that?
that's good.
His father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also sheaf arose and also stood upright, and indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." What is a sheaf?
Okay, see, they're gathering wheat or whatever,
Okay.
and then they gather them up and they line them up.
Okay. And his brother said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers invited him, but his father kept the matter in mind.
Okay, thank you. In verse 3, it says, Jacob, or Israel, he loved Joseph more than all his other sons. What were some of the reasons that he may have loved him more?
He was the son of Rachel.
Exactly, the child was born in his old age, and the child was born of Rachel, which that was who he loved. That was his love right there, and that was the first fruit of Rachel. Talk about this coat. They seem to think that this coat was a coat that was a long coat that had sleeves that went all the way to his hands and it went all the way to the ankles. It would be a coat that probably someone royalty would possibly wear. Of course, the Bible tells us that's one of the reasons that Joseph was hated by his brethren and that they couldn't speak peacefully to him. One thing you can notice when when he brought this evil report to his father, the sons that he was, the half brothers he was with, were the ones the children or the sons of the two slave girls. That's who he was with in the field when they started whatever they were doing to him, But anyway, of course, they hated him even more when he had these two dreams. It tells us that his father rebuked him. What do you think that the sun and the moon represented?
Him and his
Father
wife.
and the mother. The father and the mother.
Right, the sun was the example of was his father, represented his father, and the moon was his mother, and then the 11 stars, they were his brothers. And of course, the dreams pointed to the fact that Joseph, he would be supreme over his brothers, and the second dream pointed to the fact that these things would happen. And of course, the brothers, they had more ill will toward him, and they could only see his own ambition and pride. Turn over to Acts chapter 7 for me. We're going to get started in verse 8 in just a minute. But we see here for Stephen, he's been accused of blaspheming God and Moses, and that he spoke against the holy place, which was Jerusalem or the temple. He starts his defense in verse 1, but we're going to start over in verse 8. Here he gives an example or an outline of the same story that we read in Genesis. We're going to start at verse 8 and go to verse 16. Verse 8, and he gave him the covenant of circumcision, and so Abraham begat Isaac and circumcised him the 8th day, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs. And the patriarchs moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him, and delivered him out of all his afflictions, and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And he made him governor over Egypt and all his house. Now there came a earth over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and the great afflictions that our fathers found no substance. But when Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt, he sent out our fathers first, and at the same time Joseph was made known to his brethren, and Joseph's kindred was made known unto Pharaoh. Then sent Joseph and called his father Jacob to him, and all his kindred, 70 souls. So Jacob went down to Egypt and died, he and our fathers, and were carried over to Shechem and laid into the sepulchre that Abraham bought for a sum of money of the son of Elmore, the father of Shechem. Okay. In verse 9 we see right there, it says that the patriarchs moved with envy and sold Joseph. Envy or jealousy here means to burn off, to boil with zeal. We know that hate is such an ugly word, and I remember I had my son when he was probably 4 or 5 years old. He got into this phase that he hated everything. Everything you brought up, he would say, "I hate that," or whatever. Well, he was, I was sitting on the couch, and his mother had told him to go up to his room and pick up his toys. And so he hadn't done it, and so I told him, I said, get upstairs and go pick up your toys. And he started up those stairs and he said, I hate you. And so I was right behind him. I was a little bit quicker then than I was now. But anyway, I took him up to the bathroom and got a magazine and I made him over and I kind of gave him 5 pretty good little whacks. And I told him, I said, we've told you not to use that word. That is a bad word. We don't want you to say that word. And I said, did you mean what you said? And he said, yeah. All I could do is duck my head and kind of laugh and go out. But anyway, like I said, that's a, you know, we probably have known people who have hated a whole race of people because of something that had happened to them. I know a man who his mother and father was killed by a drunk driver that he hated, and because of the color of his skin, he hated that whole race. And he didn't hate the alcohol. It was the fact that, you know, this particular man was driving this car. And I've known other people, especially some older men that came back from the war, World War II, that, you know, they hated the Japanese. You know, it just didn't make any difference. It was just something that, you know, they hated. It didn't make any difference to them whatsoever. They just hated that whole race. You don't have to read very far into the Bible. In fact, I think you get over to Genesis chapter 4, and we read of the first murder. And all through the pages, we read the hate that the people had for the prophets and the things that were done to them. We talked about Stephen a little bit earlier, who was probably maybe one of the first deacons. He was chosen to help to take care of the Grecian widows, and he was also a preacher. And the more that he was accused of blaspheming God, and they, of course, they had his trial, and in his defense, the longer he talked, the angrier they got at him, and so they wound up and they took him out and they stoned him. Of course, we know the hate that they had for Jesus and the prophets. And we know the manner of death that so many of them did. They were crucified, they were hanged, they were beheaded, they were stoned, they were shot with arrows. It just, you know, went on. Of course, John was the only one that died a natural death. We go back into history and we go to talk about Hitler, who killed over 1.5 million Jews, who were mostly killed in gas chambers, which is just, you know, certainly hard to believe. I can remember how terrible a lot of the servicemen were treated when they came back from Vietnam. Anybody remember what we were doing in Vietnam while we were in Vietnam? What were we there for? What were we supposed to be doing?
Protecting the South from the North, right?
Well, it was to stop the spread of communism. That was our role there. What was say maybe a little bit different about this war than any other war that had been fought before?
We didn't win.
That's one point. Is one of the main things. It was televised. That was the first war that was televised. I mean, from other wars there was pictures sent back and stuff like that, but this was televised. And of course, reporters, they went looking for civilians and looking for innocent people who'd been killed or maimed or tortured or whatever. And of course, that seemed like kind of what the reporters are doing in this day and time. Of course, many of the Americans, they were horrified by what they saw, and they turned against the war, and many protested against the war. And I remember there was a protest out at Kent State University. They called out the National Guard and wound up, and it was 4 or 5 students that were shot and killed during this protest. Of course, the government, a lot of people, they were against the war because of the money. They thought the money could have been better spent on our domestic problems. And of course, some of the politicians who supported the war, they began to turn against our involvement over there. Anybody remember who the president was at that time? You all remember that?
Johnson?
Mm-mm. Nixon.
Nixon?
And then what happened to Nixon?
You got caught.
Yeah, he resigned. So that's when he stepped down, and the war effort just pretty much kind of dwindled. Also, I remember, some of you probably remember that the Watts riots that were held out in Los Angeles. It lasted for 5 days. There was looting and arson. There was property damage. It was over 3,400 people that were arrested. 34 people killed, and there was $40 million in damage done during that time. And that started over a traffic stop. 2 brothers that were, one of them failed a sobriety. They checked him, and he'd been drinking, and so they started to handcuff him, and that's when the fight started. And then the boy's mother, evidently she lived close by, and she got into it, and the whole thing got into it. It was just certainly a big mess right there. It just looks like, the days that history continues to repeat itself. Of course, I've given a few examples of hate that bring us to our, present day situation. It's just hard to imagine that the hate that is dividing our country, the hate toward our police, the hate over statues of our founding fathers, monuments being torn down and defaced, those who served our country, businesses are looted, they're burned, and in some cases the police are told not to intervene. We saw back years ago that the police, they were arresting people. Now, in some of these cases, they're just letting them go. One, I don't know if she's a congresswoman or what she was, but she said, it's not a big deal that things can be replaced, so that shows her mindset right in that case. In a lot of these cases, these monuments and stuff that are knocked down and destroyed, these rioters, they don't even know what they stood for. And it's just a sad thing to see our country being destroyed by its own people. I remember during the 60s, of course I was a young child, but Khrushchev, who was, I guess, the prime minister of Russia or whatever, he said that they would bury this country, and that they would do it without firing a shot. And it looks like that could be some truth to some of the stuff that has been done. As I said, hate is such an ugly word, but the Bible tells us things that that God hates. If somebody would read Proverbs 8:13 for me.
The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate.
Okay, thank you. All right, somebody turn over to Amos 5:15.
Pages down.
I'll tell you just a minute. So 12:43.
Hate evil, love good, establish justice in the gate. It may be that the Lord God of hosts will be gracious in the remnant of Joseph.
Okay, thank you. Okay, turn over to 1 John 3:15.
Say again.
1 John 3:15.
Whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer, and ye know that no murderer hath eternal life abiding in him.
Okay. In the absence of love, there's hate. There's no middle ground in that. It's kind of like we use the words life and death, or light and darkness. This doesn't mean that this person has not committed the act of murder, but he has certainly shown his disposition of a murderer. He's allowed evil thoughts to enter into his heart, and when these thoughts are carried to the end, it can result in murder. Somebody may not carry out these thoughts because of opportunity is lacking, or one reason is a person may just lack courage. Turn over to Matthew 5. Matthew 5:21, Jesus is talking here, and he says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thy fool, shall be in danger of hell fire."
What's that rack on me?
We'll get to that in just a minute. Of course, Jesus goes back here to the Ten Commandments, which was given to Moses, which was very plain. The commandment says, "Thou shalt not kill." Of course, the scribes of that day, they had added their own thoughts and interpretation to that law, which was not authorized by God. They said that on some occasions, the accused would escape the penalty of the law, because what they did, they said that they had added shall be in danger of the judgment, when God said that the penalty in Exodus 21 was the death penalty for murder. Now, when we talk about murder, that is something that someone has planned to do. They get angry and they kill someone. It's not the same as if they were out working in the field and they had some kind of accident, someone was killed. Then that was not what it was talking about. And they had added that they shall be in danger of the judgment, which would be that would be someone that was condemned by the lower court. And then Jesus teaches he forbids that even the thought of murder, or who is angry with his brother, would be in danger of the judgment. Many ancient authorities insert "without cause" in this verse, but it is not in the original language right there. That's something that they had added to it. And then to be in danger of the council was to be gone before or sentenced by the Sanhedrin, which was the highest court of that day. You just asked what Raca means. Anybody have any idea?
Unkind word.
Worthless.
Worthless, okay. It means, like it said, empty or vain, somebody who is worthless. It's, yeah, it's stupid. It's an expression of anger.
I can call them stupid off.
Kind of like in protesters.
But by who now?
It's kind of like in protesters.
You may have something there. But like I said, it's an expression of anger, and it was just a step further into thinking murderous thoughts right there. So, as we review just for a minute here, how did Jacob show that Joseph was his favorite son?
Yeah.
He gave him a coat. Okay. What kind of problems can we get into when a child thinks that we have a favorite child?
It ain't good.
That is a tough situation. I probably,
Jealousy rears its ugly head.
ma'am.
Jealousy rears its ugly head.
Yeah, it's just, and you know, I think as parents, when you have more than one child, you can certainly, you can be accused of that sometimes.
Still got that right.
It was kind of course, my son growing up, I was, of course, he enjoyed hunting and fishing, and I would buy him, you know, guns or whatever that we needed to hunt and fish. And I told Jill, I said, you know, it kind of bothers me, you know, that I'm doing that. And she said, well, when Sonny gets a little bit older, she will certainly pay you back. The dresses, the beauty pageants, and all this other stuff. You start getting into dresses, I mean, you can buy several guns on some of the dresses cost. So we see how that can certainly happen. How old was Joseph when he brought the bad report about his brothers to his dad?
17?
Very good. Okay. And then, how many dreams did Joseph have?
2.
Okay. And what did they mean?
He's
They
going to be
gonna
a
bow
ruler
down
one
before
day.
him.
Okay. And what are we going to study next week? We're going to talk about the brothers selling Joseph. So,
I couldn't imagine my brother coming to me saying, I had a dream and you're going to bow down to me. No, I'm not.
you're going to be a baseball player.
I know.
But thank you for your comments. Look forward to going through this class with you.
What about it,
What's
man?
up, Mr. Tom?
I was good to see you, buddy.
You too.
Hello, back. Getting better?
Oh, yes.
Let's see, man.
Still there, I tell you that. You too, man. You missed it too.
Yeah, in the back there.
Yeah. Well,
Go grab it.
I'm fixing to grab it.
Miss Wendy, how you this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Mr. Tom?
I'm all right.
Don't let her lie to you, Dad.
Fish you showing up.
You don't believe that, do you?
Yeah. Well, I lie to you in the church.
Yes. It's you're doing it. How are you, John?
All right.
Where you been, John? Been missing you, man.
Last weekend we went out of
That's
town.
what you did, though.
Hey, how are you?
Good, you?
We went to the lake. It was nice.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Hey, you been living? Good, good to see you. That's all right. Wendy's been kicking on me all night.
Did y'all stay in the
Yeah. Don't walk by, she kicked it. Like, go straight up.
Well, howdy. How are y'all doing? I'm good. You're welcome.